Okay, it's 8:30. We'll go ahead and call today's meeting of the Clay County Board of Commissioners to order. Our first item on the agenda today is an approval of the agenda. We have a motion offered from Commissioner Gross to approve the agenda.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Citizens to be heard. Are there any individuals wishing to address the board on any item that is not advertised in the agenda? Any individuals wishing to address the board? Have we had any online correspondence in regards to this, Steve?
I have not, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
Move approval?
A motion offered from Commissioner Kaylee to pay the bills and vouchers.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Campbell. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. The minutes from October 4th were in the packet. A motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the minutes.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Item 2 is the approval to accept a one-time grant funds from the Department of Human Services for adult protection. We have our social service director, Rhonda Porter, and supervisor, Kirsten. Good morning to you both.
There we go. Good morning. Okay, we are here today to request approval to accept some grant funds from the Department of Human Services for our adult protection service area. These funds are being issued through DHS. They are coronavirus response and relief supplemental funds. They're one-time funds. They must be expended by the end of September 2023. They're being allocated to counties just as a direct allocation, and then we're required to submit a spending plan. And that was attached in your packet. You'll see on the summary sheet what each county was allocated. They have made some changes to that already. Our allocation was listed as $5,674, and they did send us an email that is now $6,124. We're also told that depending on what's submitted by every county and what gets spent, there may be opportunities for additional funds. So in the motion, we would request approval to amend the budget as DHS amends our amount of funds.
Okay.
So that
You're not looking for a specific approval of a dollar amount per se, but what is allocated from DHS?
Correct. And you'll notice in the plan that we submitted, we actually requested more funds than what was allocated to us, and that was intentional with the idea that should additional funds become available, it would make it a little bit easier for us to seek that approval through DHS. So that is our request. I'll let Kirsten talk on our funding plan unless there's any specific questions.
Okay. All right, Kirsten.
Okay, so the spending plan that Clay County submitted, we looked at 5 basic outcomes, and the purpose of these funds is just to enhance the adult protective services that we can provide here in Clay County to adults that are vulnerable to maltreatment. So the 5 different outcome areas that we addressed, and I'm not going to go through them in detail, but if you have questions, you can certainly ask. It's basically covering any training for staff. During the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of face-to-face training for our staff, and I do have one staff that's been around for about a year, so she started during the pandemic, and there hasn't been any face-to-face training. So that is one area that we felt we could ask for funds through. And then our multidisciplinary team during the pandemic, we didn't meet face-to-face, And we have started meeting face-to-face, and we would like to try to enhance participation. And so we always know that food is enticing. So that is one area that we thought we could try to encourage members to come back to our MDT, just to re-engage them. Another area is just community outreach. Again, through the pandemic, we were not able to do that, and we would like to start doing that again and sponsoring some different educational events. One being our World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. We did hold that in person this year, but we would like to offer some more funding to next year's event, if possible. And during the pandemics, there were times when our adult protection investigators, it was difficult for them to meet with vulnerable adults face-to-face for many different reasons. And so one area that we thought we could enhance would just be the use of tablets or different technology to try to reach individuals that maybe are still fearful of meeting face-to-face, and that's one way that we could try to reach them as well. And then the biggest area in my mind is outcome number 5. And we know that during the pandemic, isolation increased greatly. And so this area is, the goal would be to provide some short-term supports, help individuals that we come in contact through a MARC report, a vulnerable adult report has been made, and just helping them provide some of to address their basic needs. And so some of the areas that we are thinking there is assisting them with shelter, clothing, transportation, gas cards, phone cards, grocery cards, just to meet some of those basic needs, as some folks are still isolated, unfortunately.
Commissioner Gross.
Is this, do past things that you've done qualify for this, or just future things?
That's a good question. It really, truly, some of the individuals that we came in contact through the pandemic, we are still working with, or we're receiving multiple reports on. So it's not something that we can go back on. If we have a closed case, we can't re-engage. But if those individuals come back around through another report, this would be one way of reaching them.
Commissioner Ebinger?
Just a question. Is this federal funding that's passed through the state for distribution?
It is. It's, yep, coronavirus federal money.
I was in a meeting yesterday where some of the OAA funding that comes through, the state has a new distribution that effectively cuts funding for every adult region in the state, with the exception of a 4-county metro area that gets a 7% increase. And I'll be happy to get with y'all, but the distribution that they've got is proposed at this time. And I was just wondering if this was part of it, because it's distribution of federal funding.
I'm not clear about that. It was, I think, just a couple days ago when we got an email with our revised, slightly increased allocation. So I'm thinking that perhaps not, but I'm not certain.
I'll be getting with Commissioner Cayley, and we'll keep you abreast of developments on this, because it caused a lot of concern among the members of the meeting yesterday at Dancing Skies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Any further questions on this? Yes, Commissioner Campbell?
Based on, so this is different than the ARPA funding then, right? Is it, that looks like this has a acronym of CRSA, which is a Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act.
Right.
I know on our ARPA funding, we didn't have to submit a grant application to receive it. Whereas this one, you're asking us to approve the grant application to actually get the funds, right?
Correct. Yeah, we are required to submit the funding plan, which was attached in your packet, and we did go ahead and submit that. But if they approve it, then they would be following up with an agreement for us to accept those funds. So that's what we're asking for today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it appears to us, like some other situations, that the funds went to the State Department of Human Services, and then this is their way of spending those funds and allocating them out to the counties.
And is there, I noticed you have up to, and then your totals add up to 8,500. I'm assuming that's in the event that we could get those extra funds you were talking about.
Correct.
And then is there any matching required
No.
in this grant?
No match.
Okay.
Any further questions on this?
No, that's,
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the request, a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is the committee reports. Commissioner Ebinger, would you like to start today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last Wednesday, on the 12th, I remotely attended the Northwest Regional Emergency Communication Board. Had discussion on the armor system virus protection, which really does affect all of us that rely on first responders and public safety dispatch. There's been a lot of problems with some of the antivirus stuff being pushed through, the updates, and it was recommended by the people who run this for the region that we stay 1 quarter, 3 months behind on application of these virus updates. So many of them have crashed because they're being rushed through that they're spending too much time putting the software on and then taking it off again. Talked about grant funding for training for dispatchers at their PSAPs, at their centers, which that's going to be done in the Northwest region starting immediately. Talked about encryption in the Northwest, a plan to have one key or one channel that is going to be encrypted a specific way for safety measures. Also, this came up in our meeting with the rural cities, the bidirectional antennas that we're putting, right now, Gabe Tweeten's indicated DGF has a quote out for these. There's grant funding out there, and I know that we're part of that process, but it'll make public safety communications gear more useful in these bigger schools where sometimes you have dead spots. So that's underway here in our own area. Thursday, the 13th, myself and Commissioner Gross attended Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. They did talk about Operation Greenlight. We are go for that, aren't we, with the lighting of the courthouse for Veterans Day. There's also a bonus that has been out for some time for post 9/11 veterans and Gold Star families. I believe it's combat veterans only, but for clarification, anyone who's served post 9/11 can get clarification from our veteran service officer. But there's still some grants out there available to these folks. Later that day, I attended the Rural Cities and County meeting in Sabin, Sabin Elmwood Fire Hall. Got my notes here somewhere. Here we go. We heard from the mayors and leaders from the Clay County cities about some of the workforce challenges that they're facing. Talked about preliminary levies. We had a presentation, an update on the Barnesville ambulance services that as far as funding and some of the challenges they're facing. County staff addressed and the sheriff addressed their activities to the mayors. And they were updated on the substance use crisis facility by Director McKay. Overall, it was a good meeting. I think we covered a lot of issues that were important to our county partners, and I'm sure there may be some other issues that the other commissioners want to bring up, but that's what I highlighted. On the 14th, myself, Commissioner Campbell, Administrator Larson, and the City Attorney, Brian Melton, discussed a joint powers agreement for the Red River Dispatch Center and a memorandum of understanding that's currently being discussed with the City of Moorhead. That was followed up yesterday when Commissioner Campbell and Administrator Larson and I attended the Cass County Commission meeting, referenced the proposed joint power agreement for Triple RDC. They had discussions on it, and it'll be something that comes to our attention probably within 3 to 4 weeks, I believe. Was that not the timeline? So more about that later. Yesterday, I remotely attended the Dancing Sky Area on Aging, or Agency on Aging. Had about an hour and a half discussion. Carrie Benson, the executive director from Minnesota Board on Aging, provided an update on proposed intrastate funding formula changes that are coming our way. And the bottom line on this was that of all the area on aging groups, there'll be a 2-3% cut in funding, which has not really been increased in some time, on pass-through funding from the federal government on the Older Americans Act. Our district will be going from 11.34% of the funding to 9.56%. There's one exception to these cuts, and that'll be the 4-county metro area, which is getting a 7% increase. There are a lot of issues, particularly in our rural areas, with funding for food programs, funding for transportation. These funds haven't been increased, and now they're going to be decreased. And there are older citizens that need food assistance. They're on waiting lists. We haven't had that happen in this district yet, but it looks like that could happen in next year's budget. And so this is something that collectively the county commissioners that were at this meeting indicated we're going to take to AMC. And I've made Commissioner Cayley aware of that since she's on the committee that'll be addressing that. And we're going to follow up on it and stay on top of it. But it is a concern. We reviewed the 2023 to 24 area plan, which passed with a vote. And we did the Title III Older American Act 2023 contract renewals. All of those were approved, basically because it's a good source of funding and we can't get more. This is another issue that hopefully through AMC we can take to our federal legislators and get some attention about a need to increase this funding. As far as the state goes with the surpluses they have, there's a real need for them to look at needs, particularly in outstate, to address these needs with increased funding. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Ebinger. Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. Last week, we had a couple of different dispatch meetings. One on the 11th, we met with Commissioner Ebinger and Mr. Larson and Mr. Melton, and we were reviewing a potential MOU agreement with Moorhead. But maybe to back up and explain a little bit here for the public and for the commissioners who are not involved with that. there's two major components that are going on with the new triple RDC Regional Dispatch Center. One is the JPA, which will basically be the governing document going forward in the future for operations. There's a second component of that, which is the agreement on how the new facility will be paid for. So there's kind of two separate focuses that we're dealing with here. As we all know, we have, Clay County has reserved $1.5 million in ARPA funds to bring forward for this project. The city of Moorhead has $1 million. And so basically, you know, they've been trying to determine in these discussions how it's going to work and how agreement could be established on the financing. And so what the current financial document is talking about in terms of pay for the facility would be that Cass County will be bringing $10 million to the table, and Minnesota will be bringing $2.5 million. So, and they're anticipating right now a $12.5 million building. And the reason that Cass County is different than Minnesota is because all of their funding mechanisms that they have through their 911 fees goes directly to Cass County. So the way the agreement, and we've been working quite a bit with Cass County on this, and what we've said is basically we want in there that Clay County, the language now states that Clay County would be responsible for up to 1.5 million, and the city of Moorhead would be responsible for up to 1 million. But those are also the maximum amounts that we would pay. So if the project ends up being over 12.5 million, it's going to be the responsibility of North Dakota to come up with those difference in dollars. So we've kind of got that maximum protection in there. In the event that this would be a $10 million, you know, it came in at 10 million, which is unlikely, as we all know the way things have been going. But if it were to come in at 10 million, then the Minnesota cost share would be, we would be 25% of that number, with Clay County paying 60% and Moorhead 40%. That matches the 1.5 to 1 million that the current percentage is, that's there. So that's, and we're, you know, I think that's a really good deal for our side. Our current, based on the formulas there, had we been under the different deal and we paid it all through operations, our number would be in excess of 26%, no, 26.5%. So, and then on the operational side, that has also been something we've had discussions for a long time now. And what we have, and of course the voting membership is going to be different. It's going to be now, there would be now 10 voting members, which would be 6 from the North Dakota side and 4 from the Minnesota side. Starting off, we had some concerns about that based on, you know, some of what we had heard as problems in rural areas in Clay County. But what we have managed to do in that document is to be able to have in there that certain things require at least one Minnesota vote for certain things to be approved within that process. So, you know, it's very similar to the actual document that we had when we established the diversion authority, where there were certain things that required a Minnesota entity support to pass it. Because otherwise we were always a minority vote in the group. So that's, you know, that more on that will be coming forward, but I thought it would, you know, a little bit more of an update on that process. As Mr. Ebinger said, we did go to the Cass County Commission meeting yesterday, and we were certainly in agreement with them that this Regional Dispatch Center has been a staple of cooperation for many years, and we wanted to make sure that we were there to tell them that we still intend to support and we're looking for moving forward with that facility. Then I also attended the rural cities. I guess Commissioner Ebringer gave a good summary of the different things that transpired there. I know we were also introduced to our 2 new sentence to serve crews that we have that were, I think that was well received by our small communities, and they were both able to talk about what they do and how they can help all of those communities and the process to go about making those requests for assistance. And then I already mentioned that yesterday we visited, we were at the Cass County Commission meeting, so that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Gross?
Last Tuesday, I went to Yule and attended their city council meeting, and the main discussion that the information they wanted was Highway 34. They're very concerned about getting that rebuilt, and I went over the 5-year plan with them, showing what we're going to go east of Ulen next year, and then
26.
Highway 34.
34, yeah. Yeah, 34.
That goes through Ulen. And their main concern is that, well, we're right into the city of Ulen. They want to get that road done, but we haven't got it on our schedule till 2026, so they got a little bit of wait on that yet as far as our plan goes. So that was pretty much the main concern. We did discuss a few other items, but it's a good meeting there. Wednesday morning, I went to up to 8 at the Wild Rice meeting. The main concern there was the permits. They had 26 permits to approve, and a lot of discussion, farmers putting in culverts and draining in someone else's land, and just a lot of discussion. I don't know if they came with conclusions or not. I think some of the farmers have to get together and discuss their plans, you know. They don't want someone else's water, which I can see that happening, but that was the main part of the meeting there. Wednesday afternoon, we had detox center, and the main discussion there was the doors, what type of doors, how many doors they want, stuff like that. So each door costs a little bit more money, so there had to be a lot of discussion on what type of doors, where do you want the doors, and all that, and more discussion on the B3 compliance. If we're going to go to with geothermal, there's going to be a lot of some land. To see if the land will take wells and stuff like that, so they're going to have to do some more testing there. Thursday, beyond the yellow ribbon, Commissioner Evinger ready to discuss that. Let's see, the Thursday afternoon, we had the rural city, so this, the only thing with the rural cities that I was a bit concerned is none of the cities really said they had a lot of building going on, you know. I think it's almost slowing down a little bit on the building, but the rest of the stuff has already been discussed. So. And those were my meetings. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Campbell.
Can I, Commissioner Gross, back to the Ulen piece, when they said in town, would that be a east-west road that they're talking about, or?
Yes.
Okay, because I recall some years ago, they redid the downtown already, and I just want to, because I think that was a
Not
part.
the east. It had to be quite a few years ago then.
Yeah, well, I know there was some work that was done because I think they were doing the utilities underground, and then we were responsible for paying portion of the actual resurface of the road, but I believe that was the north-south.
There's really 3 projects going on with Ulen, going east of town, going west of town, and then in town. So they're all in different years, so I don't know if that going through town could be attached to one of the, when we go east of town, whether that could be attached to that project or not, but
Okay.
I guess they'd like to get it done sooner.
Thank you, Commissioner Gross. Commissioner Kaylee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 weeks of reports because I had to leave early last week for a presentation. So on October 4th, our adult mental health leadership team met to set up presentations and plans for the next several months of that local advisory council and to discuss outreach at the training event that we held on the 7th. On the 5th, I was able to attend the drug court graduation. Those are always so wonderful. And a side note on that, this last week, I attended a listening session, statewide listening session on substance use disorder. And it was brought up in the feedback from the professionals attending that listening session that these treatment courts are just really effective in their counties and communities. And so thank you to all of our staff that really pour into these individuals in that program. And congratulations to our recent graduate. On the 6th, I attended our Children's Mental Health Local Advisory Council. We discussed the annual survey that group does and reporting strategy and what the plans are for the content for next spring's report to the board. So trying to get a jump on that work to make sure that report is as robust as possible and as useful as possible to this board. We also had a long discussion with school counselors on what they're seeing in schools this year. And the Ulen Hydrodal superintendent and a counselor from Holly attended for the first time in that group. So it was really great to have our rural schools represented in that meeting to talk about the mental health of their kids and what's going on. Later that day, I met with the Clay County Collaborative. We voted to fix a calculation error to Ulen Hydrodal's support of children's mental health services contract. So there was a staffing transition, and the previous coordinator for the collaborative was using one number to calculate everybody's support, and then the interim coordinator, when they came in, used a different number for that Ulen Hydrodal contract. So we just changed it to increase their support level so it was in line with what everybody else got. So just kind of a housekeeping detail. We also voted to extend the contract of the interim coordinators to at least the end of the fiscal year to ensure that all of our reporting gets done accurately and to provide time for a hiring process and some overlap for training of a new coordinator for that position. On the 7th, I got to be the moderator for our early childhood initiatives training, How to Talk to New Americans About Mental Health. We had great attendance and conversation, many actionable takeaways, and great insight from our main speaker and panelists at that event. It was attended by a lot of educators in the area, as well as mental health providers, and even some folks from North Dakota joined us for that as well. So thank you to everybody who participated in that, and thank you to the team from the Early Childhood Initiative that volunteered their time to put that event on. On the 10th, the Law Library met to vote on a new slate for the Board of Trustees for that group. And we also voted on the self-help clinic contract to extend as is until the end of the year. At that point, we'll take a look at our financials and decide if we can add some more hours to that self-help clinic since it's been so popular. Such needed, yeah. On the 11th, that was last Tuesday, as I said, I had to leave a little bit early. I was presenting for a NACO affiliate in Ohio on some of the childcare work that we've been doing. Of particular interest, they wanted to hear about our suite of incentives for childcare providers in Clay County that we approved with ARPA funds. Yeah, that was a great conversation. They liked some of our ideas, and some of their researchers were going to take a look at like the special family childcare that we worked with the state on getting some approval for, and that our social services department is trying to roll out here. and then some of that low-hanging fruit that we addressed with our ARPA funds to help keep our businesses in business and new businesses started in that childcare industry. Later that night, I also attended a candidate forum for state races about childcare issues. I just wanted to hear where those candidates were at and some of the questions that were being asked by the providers in the room and the families in the room. That was a great discussion that night. On the 13th, I also attended that rural cities and county meeting that's been well reported on by this group, so I don't need to report on that further. And I believe that concludes my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaylee. I also have 2 weeks worth of reports. This morning, I attended the League of Women Voters Forum that was held at the Moorhead Public Library 2 weeks ago. Appreciative of their diligent effort to continue those forums and encourage them to reach out to as many candidates as possible in the future. I also attended the Heart of Clay Sweet Freedom event at the Marriott. That group has just been so instrumental in the programming component, not only in our previous jail, but our new correctional facility. And it really is heartwarming to hear the success stories of that program because this board really did put so much effort into making sure there was appropriate space and resources for those pieces to be allowed in the new facilities. So that was really a great event. I attended the PIC committee meeting that week as well, where we addressed the CDL licensure issue that this board supported last week. Thank you for that. Hopeful that that can continue to address the concerns that we're seeing in this area. It is exciting to report that we have filled a position already because of that action. I also attended with Commissioner Kaylee the drug court graduation. Agreed, that is such a great component of the court systems, and thankful for the county staff that really helped to facilitate those intense rehabilitation program. Really is what I view it as. Hopeful that we can continue to seek collaboration for additional specialty courts. Feel that there are some other counties in the state that are doing additional ones. For instance, DWI court, I feel it would really be beneficial locally, but congratulations to the graduate as well. That evening, the next day rather, I attended the 7th District Court listening sessions that were held at the Yumcump Center. I sat with our county attorney, Brian Melton. Thankful to, boy, were there 13 of the district, which is huge. Judges that were present for the discussion, and really so thankful that they took time to do that. I hope that they will continue to see Moorhead as a good spot for that. I think that it might have been a little bit of a disappointment that there wasn't as many members of the public that attended that, but there were really a wide scope, be it small, a wide scope of people that were there to share their insight, and I think it was helpful for us working with county issues to relay what we're seeing and hearing, and certainly we all share this building, so how we can continue to reach as many of our members and of the public, and making sure that the information that we're sharing is clear and people can understand that. The next day, I attended a tour, as you all did the week prior, of the Terracon facility. Incredibly informative. As a member that sits on the Clay County Planning Commission, that we've really dealt with a number of their permits over the years. It was really great to get out there and really see the vision that the permits have helped to facilitate. I think to have a facility of that magnitude in Clay County, really close to one of the largest in the country, is really something that Clay County should be proud of. I know we talked a little bit about how they transport their goods out and how we can help work with that to ease township and citizen concerns. I think the ball's rolling on that, so thank you for those on the highway committee that are doing that. Last week, I also attended with Commissioner Gross the planning meeting for our Clay County Substance Use Crisis Facility. Really encouraged to see the planning that's going through with that, and that was our first meeting that our construction management firm was present at, so it was really nice to have them on board as we move forward with designing that. Certainly, there's some elements with the B3 that I think we can move through, and our contractor had no issue with that. I also attended the Rural Cities Roundtable meeting last week. Thank you to the city of Sabin for hosting that. The fire hall is something we can all in Clay County be proud of, so it was great to have so many people around that table. We did talk a lot about levies and projected levies, and I will agree with Commissioner Gross. There was a time when I recall the first items that each city would report on was the new additions and the new lots, and now I think people are coming into a point where they're dealing with the infrastructure pieces, the underground and the roads to open up for those lots, but did seem a little bit of a slowdown with those new lots. So I think we need to continue to discuss how we, what's available in all of Clay County and how we continue to attract folks to live here, but also how we can address those challenges to keep people to stay here. So appreciated that. There, Dilworth does have a couple larger businesses that will be going in along that Highway 10 corridor. Encouraged to hear that because there was some substantial road components that they talked about that we added in that will help with that. We did have an update from Barnesville on the ambulance service. One update is now there's a second option for air ambulance within Clay County, Air Med and the Air Lifelink. The Air Lifelink will transport to Detroit Lake, so that's another faster option for Eastern Clay County, so I thought that was really great. And again, thank you so much to all of those folks that attended that. After the meeting, I did have a discussion with Karen Lauer from MnDOT about an update on a MnDOT grant application, a trails component that they're hoping to go into the running for adding a bike lane to Reed Field. As if you're familiar with Barnesville, that's basically the ball field that's across the railroad. And so what they're seeing is kids, because there's not a designated bike path, are on the road, and that's quite a busy highway. So I'm hoping to address that with that grant fund. A reminder, today is the deadline to register online or in person for the election for early registration. You can also register online or in person on election day, but if you want to do it ahead of time, today's the deadline for that. And then I also did get a notice to the entire board from the State Historic Preservation Office, it's a Minnesota department, that out of the 3 locations that are being considered for the State Historic Preservation Review Board for the National Register of Historic Places, we do have one in Clay County. It's the District Number 3 school, which is the Rolog Woodland School in Park Township. There is a meeting on November 15th virtually that is, they're asking for comment or support. And if this board felt it appropriate, they're also asking for comments to be submitted ahead of time. And this is really, I think, something that Clay County can be proud of, some of our historic places, and thought maybe it would be appropriate to have a letter of support come from this board, encouraging that review board to appoint that. So I'm not sure if the board thought so, if Steve could draft a letter to send ahead of that deadline. Any comments on that? Appropriate? I think we need a motion if we're going to send a letter of support.
I move we send the letter of support for the historical designation of, what is it, School 3?
District 3, number
District
3.
3.
Yep. Thank you. We have a motion of support from Commissioner Ebinger.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Campbell. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed, thank you. And then also, last week, it's not a committee report, but I did attend the funeral of Arvid Thompson, who was a long-term county commissioner and served in World War II, and just amazing story. A true public servant, attended the Clay County Fair last summer at 94 years old. So just our sympathies to that family, but also gratitude to Arvid for the years of service to Clay County. And that concludes my, Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had mentioned about the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum. I also did attend the one that was involving county commission races. Afterwards, I did speak with one of the board members there, and I expressed a little bit of disappointment. And the disappointment was the fact that in past practices, anybody who was on the ballot would be invited to attend and be able to be part of that and to be able to express and answer questions, not just those who have a competition for their seat. And I mentioned the fact that this year with redistricting, I have 25 new 100 residences in my district, and they deserve to be able to hear from their candidate whether they're contested or not. And I just, because I think their intentions are good and what they do is good, and being able to get public information out there. But I really believe that in the future they need to go back to that. I know sometimes you can get a lot of people up there, but just like they did I noticed what they did on the Moorhead School Board, they broke it down into 2 different sessions. If that needs to be the case, that should be the case. But I think everybody who is a candidate or is willing to put their name on the ballot should be able to be present and be able to answer questions. And I think, Commissioner Mojo, I think you would agree with me on that.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion because I appreciate that there was, that Commissioner Kaylee and Paul were able to take part in it, but I had 3 phone calls that thought that I had dropped out because I wasn't even just not invited, and so that looks poorly. I think it's a way of silencing candidates. But soapbox off.
Well, anyway, I guess I do want to say I appreciate those. I know there's other things coming forward that are put on by different entities, and on those I know I got invited, so.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, I did attend the multiple meetings that Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Evergrove had discussed in regards to the Red River Dispatch. After board last week, I also went over to speak with Joe Olson on a series of different projects on the county. I also got a tour of the projects that are going on there. I think that as a board, it would be good to see the work that you've approved, kind of upgrading it to a new decade. So that's good to see over there. Met with Brian Melton last week on a series of county issues. On the 12th, we had county management. We talked about budget issues, Strive update, and discussed workforce. We had a safety and security committee update. There's going to be a new version of our flip chart that we've had in dealing with potential emergencies here at the county. That's going to be coming before this board probably early November with those updates. Participate on the 12th with the substance use crisis facility updates. And just going off Commissioner Mojo's comments, I believe that this week they're wrapping up the B3 additional testing and work that you guys approved previously, and so we should have some additional information on that hopefully by our next meeting. Participate in the rural meetings. Again, thank you for Saban for hosting. Appreciate opportunities to get out into the county, and so we've extended that, continue to extend that for any other cities that wish to hold that in the spring and our fall sessions.
Steve, I did get a reply from the mayor of Barnesville. They'd like to host in the spring.
Okay.
Yesterday, I met with Mark Sloan in regards to that safety and security committee information. Also participated in the Cass County committee meeting. Would note that yesterday during the board meeting, they did provide the proposed JPA in the public, and so I will provide that to the commissioners here. Again, it'd be subject to change based on feedback from other cities and county. But having said that, there's been a lot of discussion that's led up to this document. Would just note the open enrollment starts for our employees tomorrow. A little bit of a different. We were hoping that we were going to be able to do it electronically under our new payroll system. Unfortunately, there are some complexities that weren't anticipated by UKG, and so our employees are going to be getting an email with all of the documents rather than getting the packet. We'll get essentially the emails. An email with that information, and so having our employees looking for that. Just 2 notes, on Friday, we have a AMC district meeting at Fergus Falls. Again, they've shifted that to the Big Wood Event Center. That's a posted meeting. And also, before we meet again on our board, just make a note on Monday, the MPCA is going to be here to tour the resource recovery facility. That's a posted meeting, so I would encourage commissioners that have not been out there, it's an opportunity to see the magnitude of that project. Again, I will send out some information. They're going to be doing some road work on the north entrance, which is generally where we park, and so we'll have to come through the south side, but again, I'll get that information to you. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Brian, do you have anything? Steve, back on the candidate component, there is a candidate Cracker Barrel, and there'll be 3 commissioners that have been invited to that. That's likely something we'll need to post, correct? So that's the chamber. Okay.
That's on Monday, the 24th at 4 o'clock, I believe it is,
Yep.
at the bar.
What?
It's at the bar.
What bar?
Well, it's at some brewery.
Okay.
Okay.
Just Fargo Brewing Company.
Okay, anything else? Yes.
I just wanted to
Commissioner
encourage, I know we got an email on the United Way campaign, and there wasn't much participation yet, and I encourage all our supervisors to get their employees to respond to that. And I think it's important to the cities of Fargo, Morgan, all around Clay County, so encourage people to participate in that.
Ross? Anything else? We are adjourned.